Hi, I'm Rosalie Corrame. I am a transformational somatic trauma healing coach. And this is one in a series of videos called Understanding Developmental Trauma and Healing. My passion and vision is that everyone who has a history of developmental trauma will have free and abundant access to information and resources that really help, so that you feel seen and understood, so that you understand and appreciate yourself better, realizing where you've come from and where you are and how much you have done, and so that you have a variety of options for ways that you can support and accelerate your own healing journey, regardless of whether or not you are also working with a trauma healing facilitator or group. I'm glad that you're here. I hope you find this information helpful and useful, and thank you for being you. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being interested. I'm going to talk this time about the structures that keep us safe and keep us stuck. So I already discussed basic human needs and what's developmental trauma, right? What's the experience of developmental trauma like, and what's involved in developmental trauma recovery. And I mentioned safety and support. I mentioned agency having an impact on my life. I mentioned a sense of self. I am somebody. I know that I'm somebody. I know who I am, right? I think I'm forgetting one. Let me check my notes. Right. Addressing freeze, finding a way through and around freeze, and accessing essential life force energy. So the thing I want to talk to you about in this talk is something that actually can get in the way of every single one of those avenues to healing. So I want to talk about how we're protected and stuck. So I mentioned a little bit, and I'll go into this further, right, that those of us who have had trauma, particularly significant trauma, we have this cache of painful, difficult, overwhelming emotional experience that we're hiding from ourselves inside our body somewhere. So there's lots of awful, awful hidden emotions. And our body and our brain do various creative things to keep those emotions hidden. And that those things that our bodies and brains do cause us not to function as well as we could. So that's a part of the structure that I'm talking about in this talk. And then the other part is, as humans, and I believe all mammals, I'm sure many other kinds of animals as well, but anyway, as humans, we actually have an inbuilt programming that helps us to learn from our experiences to increase our chance for survival. So whenever we have a bad experience, we automatically, maybe some combination of consciously and unconsciously, but this certainly happens unconsciously. We look for the causes. What was it that caused me to have that bad experience? I want to adjust my behavior in the future so that that particular bad thing does not happen. When I was a kid, I didn't drink juice, any juice, for an entire year, because one time on a road trip, I drank some juice and I got really, really sick. And my body just said no to juice for a long time. That's an example. It's an unconscious learning. What do I think made that happen? And let me not do that. Got it? So in our less than perfect upbringings, in our homes and our kindergartens or daycares and schools and clubs and out in the world, we've had a bunch of bad experiences to one extent or another. And so we have quite a collection of internal instructions that say, don't do that, never do that again. So I'm hiding emotions from myself, and I've got this whole long list of things I'm not supposed to do, things I'm not supposed to, ways I'm not supposed to behave, and so on. And that's a lot of constraints, right? So how can I just get on with my life with all of that, having to thread all those needles, right? Having to find my way to avoid all those things I'm supposed to avoid. And so the way that we do that is that it's sort of like we build a scaffolding for ourselves. Like we create this unconscious and possibly complex set of structures inside of our body mind that keeps track of everything, that works out how to make it all work, and that sort of, I think, just, right, like it figures out how to follow all the rules, and then it sort of tells us to stay on the path. And then, like, if I start doing something that's going to take me off the path, if I do something that's going to break one of the unconscious rules, something will keep me from doing that. I'll just sort of get nudged or bonked back onto the path I'm supposed to be on. It's like a gut feeling or an intuition or an emotional response. Something will happen that sets me back into the safe space that the wisdom of my collective unconscious processes has determined is where it's best for me to live my life. Okay. So that happens, and for a lot of us, that's pretty okay, right? For people whose lives are not terribly demanding, where there isn't undue stress or undue complications, then this unconscious constraint structure can work fairly well. Fairly well because it's not working perfectly, because in fact, right, some of the pieces of that structure really aren't benefiting us anymore, and we would have more range of experience if they weren't there. But working fairly well in terms that I can have some kind of a life, and I can feel maybe pretty okay a lot of the time, and I don't know that there's stuff that's wrong, right? Okay, so here's the thing. When big stuff happens, then our scaffolding, the scaffolding that we're living our life safely inside of, gets knocked about or broken. So whenever anything big happens, right, a separation, a divorce, the loss of a job, starting a new job, moving to a new place, a friend or family member becoming very ill or dying, whenever there's any significant change, it shakes things up, and there's a possibility that change will disrupt our scaffolding. And I believe that's the reason, that's at least one contributing reason to how and why healing crises occur. That is to say, when there's a crisis, the person at the other end of the crisis, they come out with more of themselves than they went in with. That because I believe that within each of us, there are these beautiful impulses, right? The impulse to be fully alive, the impulse to express myself, the impulse to connect in a good way, lots of connection, lots of goodwill, lots of expression. Those impulses are there. And the structures we have to protect us, so mitigate those impulses to a greater or less extent. And so there's this sort of balance, right, between my my fundamental healthy impulses and my self-protective stuff inside. And when something big happens, things get all shaken up, and those impulses can then break through. It's like, wait a minute, here's what I've been trying to say or feel for a really long time, right? So, there are other things that can mess with our structures, like going to therapy or going to a spiritual or religious or self-growth retreat of some sort, right? Or going on a vacation, right, to the beach or the mountains, someplace that's truly beautiful, right there. If we go into some powerful healing container, somewhere where I'm actually being invited, directly invited and blessed to be, hey, welcome. Please feel free to be more of yourself here. Right? That invitation can shift the balance between my organic, healthy impulses and the self-protection structures that are holding them down. Right? And so it's tricky, right? It's tricky because these structures really are protecting us and they really are keeping us stuck. So we do want to dismantle them, but if I come in with a steamroller and knock everything down, and suddenly then that what happens is suddenly everything I thought I knew, I realize isn't true, and like I'm a lot more messed up than I thought, and I mean I don't know anything, right? I don't know what I think, I don't know what I feel, I don't, right? A quick, profound dismantling of structures can be very disturbing and challenging. And some people who use transformational medicines have experience like that. Like they have some kind of spiritual or medicinal experience that sort of shows them a lot of stuff they weren't ready to see, right? And then like nothing means anything anymore. Who am I? What's going on? So we want our structures to be ultimately dismantled, but generally it's not advised to bring in a steamroller. And yet, again, even walking to any healing container where we truly are invited to feel safe, where there's adequate holding and attunement that we can feel safe, then that, like these organic healing impulses, these life impulses immediately start pushing up against the structures and wanting to knock them about. And so it's a dance, right? If I'm a client doing healing with some kind of facilitator, a therapist or a coach or a mentor, we need to find the pace of the dance that will shift things, but not too fast, not too much. Because if things shift too fast or too much, what happens after that, I mean, two things might happen, right? If a lot of stuff gets dismantled, or even one big piece gets moved all at once, there are one of two things that might happen. One of them is I might actually have a breakdown. I might lose myself, and some people never find themselves again. It might take me a long time. So that absolutely can happen. Or another thing that can happen is like the place where those structures arose from in the first place is going to jump back up and put all the structures right back in place, except put a few more locks on them and make them a little harder to move. So sometimes we can have a beautiful, transformational, fabulous experience where I go, oh wow, I see, I am loved, right? I am light, I'm part of the universe. This is so great, this is so wonderful, I feel so free. And then a day or two or three later, like everything comes crashing down, and I feel even more depressed and even more stuck and even more lost than I was before that experience happened. So, there's more I could say about that specific kind of thing, but this isn't the moment. So I'm just going to say it's tricky. It's tricky, and we're not going to get it right the first time, right? As a self-healer, as someone working with a facilitator, you're going to find that sometimes it goes too slow, and you're going to find that sometimes you're going too fast, and you get shaken up. And like you have to allow for the mistakes and find your way. Same thing when you are a healing facilitator. Sometimes you're going to work so slow that your clients are barely moving forward, and it's really frustrating and painful. And sometimes you're going to invite an opening and invite them through something that feels really awesome, perhaps both to you and to them, and then provokes a really big backlash. So we experiment. We can't just get it right all the time. So that's what we're looking for, is the right pace of how to dismantle these structures. So I want to talk briefly about self-practices. I am eagerly advocating self-practices these days as one important element in our individual healing journeys. Self-practices are just simple things that we pause and do that are different than what we would do otherwise, and that in some way bring us into connection with our bodies, or into connection with our feelings, or connect with some aliveness, right? So self-practices are a little bit sneaky and insidious, right? It's not as intense as walking into a healing container, but the self-practice is a disruption of the status quo of my internal structures, right? My structures having me like, do this, and think this way, don't feel too much. And then I start doing these practices, and like the practices are going to be pushing on the boundaries of how I'm accustomed to living, what I'm accustomed to living inside of. And that's a good thing. Now it's a good thing. And the more complex your trauma is, the more complex your nervous system is, the most likely the less tolerance you'll have for even small nudges at the edges. So again, it's the dance, right? I'm going to do my self-practice, and I'm going to pay attention. And if anything I do sort of gives me a kind of a shock or a pause, I'm going to pause. I'm going to be curious about that, and maybe I don't want to do that practice for now, because it seems like that particular practice, like was touching up against, one of the beams that holds everything up. And again, I don't want to knock down any beams right now, right? We just want to move things around a bit. So each of us needs to try different practices and see which ones are effective for us, are effective in the range of, not too much, but that provide some opening. Yeah, I believe that there's enough wisdom inside our own bodies and minds, and in the field around us, right? Of the universe that we're all connected, our ancestors, our guides, however you understand it. I believe that there is enough wisdom in and around us to help us know, right, what's too much, and to help us, to do the magical work of adjusting these structures, right? Like these unconscious structures that limit what I can do. As I do my practices, I do a practice, maybe gratitude and celebration. Whoa, yay! Oh my goodness, I'm so grateful to be alive, right? For me, that's definitely bumping up against some of my structures, right? Don't feel too big. Don't feel too big of a positive, good feeling. So if I do that practice, and I might have a little bit of a when I do it, right? If I do that and it feels good in my body, and there's nice results in the moment in my body, and nothing bad happens. The bad thing that used to happen when I was little and I was expressive like this doesn't happen, right? Then the unconscious committee that's responsible for all the unconscious structures says, maybe we can soften up on that one a little bit. And if I do that practice every day for a week or something, yeah, I believe that there's enough wisdom inside our own bodies and minds, and in the field around us, right? The universe that we're all connected, our ancestors, our guides, however you understand it. I believe that there is enough wisdom in and around us to help us know, right, what's too much, and to help us, to do the magical work of adjusting these structures, right? Like these unconscious structures that limit what I can do. As I do my practices, I do a practice, maybe gratitude and celebration. Whoa, yay! Oh my goodness, I'm so grateful to be alive, right? For me, that's definitely bumping up against some of my structures, right? Don't feel too big. Don't feel too big of a positive, good feeling. So if I do that practice, and I might have a little bit of a when I do it, right? If I do that and it feels good in my body, and there's nice results in the moment in my body, and nothing bad happens. The bad thing that used to happen when I was little and I was expressive like this doesn't happen, right? Then the unconscious committee that's responsible for all the unconscious structures says, maybe we can soften up on that one a little bit. And if I do that practice every day for a week, that every day for a few months, then that unconscious committee that's responsible for the structures might say, yeah, wow, things really are different. There's room in Rosalie's life at this point for her to celebrate and feel joy. And, we don't need to keep her restricted in that area anymore. So, I don't know if these are the right metaphors, right? I don't know how it really works exactly in terms of brain synapses and the storing of memories and where our emotional and physiological habits reside inside our brains and all that stuff. It's a metaphor, from my experience, it's a metaphor that works, right? So I am inviting you to pick some kind of practice that you can do, and I will say more about this in other videos, but it could be as simple as putting your hand on your heart and saying, I love myself, I forgive myself, I have full permission to be here and be alive. Okay? Something as simple as that. Many, many, many kinds of practices. I encourage you to pick at least one and to set the intention to do it every day for some period of time. And to keep going with that. So, did I miss anything? Structures. And how the structures, so again, the structures keep us safe. They are important because that's what we know how to live inside of, right? So we're not making these things bad. All this stuff is what helped us get this far in our life. So we want to have a respectful attitude toward our structures and respectfully, gently, right, move them, shift them, rearrange them until there's room in my life for me to be fully alive, fully expressive, and feel fully safe, and to freely connect with whoever it is that's appropriate and safe for me to connect to. That's what we're going for. So, thank you so much for listening. I will continue in other talks on other specific aspects of developmental trauma healing and self-practices. Thanks so much.